Here's the part nobody admits. You'll spend more time reading a cereal box than most people spend choosing the land they'll sink their savings into. I bought 22 off-grid acres. The View sold me in about 4 minutes. And almost everything I'd undo today, I'd undo on day 1 before I ever signed, because I bought what I could see and waved off everything I couldn't. So let me rank them, not by how much they hurt, but by how impossible they are to take back, because that's the real trap out here. The decisions you can see are cheap to change. The ones you can't see lock in the second you sign, and you spend the next 5 years paying interest on them. So I'm counting up from the regret I could fix tomorrow to the one I'd give anything to redo before I ever made an offer. Number 6, and the easiest to forgive in hindsight, the acreage. I wanted 22 acres because 22 acres sounds like freedom. What nobody tells you is that every single acre is a bill that never stops arriving. Every acre is property tax, every year, forever. Every acre is brush you have to clear for fire, every season. Every acre is fence line the day you decide to fence. Every acre is more ground to walk, mow, and bush hog with equipment that does not love a slope. Maintenance cost scales straight up with acreage. It does not flatten out because you got tired. So add up what you actually use. A home site, a garden, a septic field, water storage, a privacy buffer. For most people, that's south of 5 usable acres. Home site, garden, livestock if you want it, septic plus room for a replacement field down the line, and a buffer. The rest is just terrain you're renting from the county. Now buffer land has real value. Privacy and quiet are assets. I'm not pretending otherwise. But there's a difference between buying space you'll use and buying a number that sounds impressive on the deed. I've read comments from people who went 80 acres off-grid and called it a work prison. They sold. The smartest person in my comments owns 1 acre with a well and septic already in, low taxes, paid off, and 0 regrets. Get what you can afford, manage, and protect. So before you fall for a big number, do the boring math. Which acres are working for you and which are just charging rent on your weekends? Number 5, I bought beautiful. The land slopes, the view is unreal, and I'd be lying if I said I regret looking at it every morning. But beautiful sends an invoice, and it doesn't stop at the down payment. Building on a slope runs roughly 20% more for driveway, foundation, and dirt work than the same project on flat ground. Drainage has to be engineered instead of assumed. My driveway already washed out once from erosion and ruts, so I rebuilt the whole thing. A tractor that handles fine on flat ground gets twitchy and genuinely dangerous on a grade. And the foundation work for anything you build is a different, more expensive animal. And the land is full of rock, which sounds romantic until a backhoe finds it for you. Here's the day 1 move I skipped. Walk the buildable part in the rain, in real boots. Not in the listing photos. Listing photos are shot at angles that flatten every slope on Earth. That's not an accident. Estimate 20% more for the dirt work and heavier or specialized equipment on top of that. Walk it wet, walk it dry, and if you're set on a view lot, buy the one where the flattest spot on the property is exactly where the house is going to sit. The view is a real asset. Just read the price tag stapled to the back of it before you sign. Number 4 is the one that actually scares me because it can make land literally unbuildable, and almost nobody checks it before they sign their name. Can you legally put a toilet here? On raw land with no sewer? That question comes down to a PERTS test, a soil percolation test that measures how fast the ground absorbs water and decides whether it will take a septic drain field at all. The test itself is cheap, $300 to $1,000, 2 days of work, a licensed tester digging a couple of holes and timing the soak. And if it fails, heavy clay, a high water table, or bedrock near the surface are common reasons. and a standard gravity septic is simply off the table. Now you are either looking at an engineered or mound system that runs $12,000 to $40,000, or a parcel where you cannot legally build a home. Period. No permit, no house, just a very scenic place to park. It is not even a coin flip you can read ahead of time. The soil either drains in the workable range or it does not, and clay is not always uniform, so a spot that fails 50 feet over might pass, but you have to actually test it. The buyer pays for that test every time because raw land sells as is, and the seller owes you nothing, and the results expire. Most are good 2 to 5 years, so old paperwork from the listing does not count. And here is the leverage almost nobody uses. A failed perk is not only a warning, it is a negotiating chip, and that means the price should come down by tens of thousands. So the day one move is brutal and simple. Make your offer contingent on a passing purse test, a $500 test that saves you from a gorgeous, unbuildable lot is the best money you will ever not have to spend. Number 3, nearly turned my place into a petting zoo I never signed up for. Out here it's open range, and that phrase costs a lot more than it sounds. In around 13 western states, the rule is fence out, not fence in. That means if a rancher's cattle wander onto my unfenced land, eat the garden, and leave their, let's call them contributions, everywhere, the rancher generally owes me nothing. The entire legal burden to keep them off my property sits on me. And a fence the law actually recognizes isn't a couple of T-posts and good intentions. In plenty of these states, a lawful fence is defined down to the wire, 3 strands of barbed wire, substantial posts about 20 feet apart, gates as good as the fence. If your fence is in disrepair and a cow strolls through, you may have no recourse at all. It gets worse on the road. In open range, you hit a cow with your truck, and you can end up paying for the cow. There's a workaround a few homesteaders flagged for me. Temporary electric fencing lets you rotate grazing and even put those cows to work on your brush instead of fighting them. But a full permanent perimeter is real money. I've got 2 sides fenced. The quote to finish the other 2 was $8,000, and that number only goes up with every acre you bought for the view. So the day one move, check with the county whether you're in open range or a herd district before you buy, and budget full perimeter fencing from the day you close, not the day the cows introduce themselves. Number 2 is the one I'd undo the hardest, and it isn't on the land at all. It's whether anyone will insure what you build on it. I bought in a high fire zone, and in those zones the major private carriers have largely walked away entirely. The fallback is the state fair plan, the insurer of last resort, and it covers basic fire and smoke only. That wraparound, they call it a difference in conditions policy, is the only thing putting theft, water damage, and liability back on your coverage, and it's another $1,500 to several thousand a year on its own. The fair plan typically runs 1.5 to 3 times a standard premium. In high fire zones, $5,000 to $12,000 a year is common, and the worst zip codes sail past 20,000. California just approved a 29% average rate hike effective this fall, and some wildfire premiums are set to flat out double. That comes right after the January 2025. Los Angeles fires handed the fair plan around $4 billion in losses, and it assessed insurers $1 billion to cover it, half of which gets passed straight back to customers. This is not a California-only problem either. Fire zones are expanding nationwide. So before you make an offer, do the free version. Pull the fire hazard map for the exact parcel, then call 3 to 5 carriers and ask if they'd write a policy at that specific address. If most say no, that isn't a hurdle to push through, that's your answer. And either way, budget for defensible space. 100 feet of clearance is the legal standard in state fire areas, plus a 5-foot ember-resistant zone hard against the house. And that's not a one-time chore. its annual labor and equipment cost. Forever. The flip side, documented hardening, that ember-resistant 5-foot zone, a Class A roof, cleared brush, is one of the few levers that actually pulls your premium down, so do it on purpose, not after the inspector flags it. Which brings me to number 1, the single thing I would undo before all the rest, and the open loop I promised you at the top. Water. I knew going in there was no municipal hookup. What I did not do was the homework, and the homework was nearly free. Most states publish well logs in a public groundwater database, and almost nobody opens them. Those logs tell you how deep the neighbors had to go, where the water actually sat, and whether it came in fast enough to live on. A well that hits water at 3 gallons a minute is a very different life than one that trickles. I could have pulled them, called 2 or 3 drillers, and asked the only questions that matter: how deep, cost per foot, and what percentage of wells in this zip code actually hit usable water. I called one driller, one opinion, on a decision this size. Now I am staring down a well that goes 300 to 500 feet through mountain granite at $30,000 to $70,000, and here's the gut punch nobody mentions. You pay per foot whether or not you hit water. Drilling costs have jumped almost 30% in 5 years. And in drought states, it is worse. And even if you do strike water, hitting water is not the same as usable water. People drill, celebrate, and then find out it is not drinkable. A filtration system to fix that runs another $1,000 to $15,000. In fractured granite like mine, 2 neighbors a quarter mile apart can get wildly different depths and yields, so the well next door is a hint, not a promise. So the day one move is the cheapest and the most ignored on this whole list. Read the well logs. Walk the land in the wettest month and the driest month. That spring you saw in spring is gone by September, and put a backup water plan in writing before you close. Hauling, rain catchment, anything. Though if you are somewhere semi-arid, do the math before you bet on the sky. The veterans in my comments all said the same thing 100 different ways. Buy water, buy access, buy sunshine, and be redundant, because everything breaks and you cannot run to a store. You need water the day you arrive, not the day you finally drill. So would I still buy it? Yeah, I would. But notice what every single one of these has in common. The view, the acreage, the slope, the stuff I could see. I've made peace with all of it. It's the invisible stuff that's still eating me. The water table, the insurability, the perks, the order I did things in. The expensive decisions were never the ones I was staring at. They were the ones I assumed I'd figure out later. So do them first, in the order of how hard they are to reverse, while there's still a phone call and a $500 test instead of a second mortgage. They're cheap on day 1 and brutal on day 2,000. If this saved you one wrong signature, subscribe. The well drilling video is coming.